Hi, I'm Tonja Walker, and welcome to One Day to Love. My guest today is a British-born director. He's known for his sci-fi films and his rock videos. He's directed over 500 rock and roll videos, and he's also done several movies. He's got a new one coming out. It's actually a series called The Time War, and he's going to tell us all about it in just a few minutes. I'm hoping he'll let me play some of his work. I'm not supposed to, so we'll see if, since he owns it, maybe we can play it. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Okay, so I've been watching your music videos, and the Manowar one is just incredible. Like 113 million people watch that?
Probably.
Jeez, and I don't listen to that kind of music, so I didn't know that, but it was sensational. It was really, really wild.
Well, so I mean, just I don't know how much you actually know about me because we've worked together a little bit, but I never really tell you much about you know who I am or what I do.
Well, you like to
Um,
stay mysterious, and I figured
yeah,
that was just your thing.
it is my thing. You got to remember, I was writing books at the age of 10, science fiction novels, and the age of 2, I was singing. I was just one of these weird kids who just never had an had a normal path. I was born in England. I was sent to Australia when I was 5,
And that's
and
when you started doing movies, didn't you start recording movies at like between really like maybe 12 you really got into it, but you started looking into it at like 12.
yeah, well, I was always writing science fiction stories because I didn't belong in Australia. I was British, and it's back in the 70s. To be a British person, you were the target of racial attacks, not by skin color, but because you were British, and I had a little British accent, and I was also very short. I was the shortest boy around, so people would pick on me, and uh, that's just how life was.
Yeah.
The British were the arch enemies at the time because Australia was trying to be its own thing, and so plus I was small, so that was it. And so I retreated into science fiction films, and a few other things, very dark things happen, which we won't talk about here. Maybe on a different episode if we decide.
Yeah, we'll see.
Very, very dark.
I've got
Um,
I've got it all here, hon.
oh, good. But it was just a thing, and I got into film school. I did music videos. It's all I've ever wanted to do is make stories and visual art. I was into cameras. I was obsessed with cameras. I was obsessed with science fiction. I read H.G. Wells's The Time Machine when I was 6. I was one of those kids.
That's really early to be reading The Time Machine.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So I've got a list of some of your biggest movies that are here, and I have to tell you, I watched Road Warrior. They came out in 2016, and I just thought it was great.
Well, thank you.
It took me out of whatever it was I was doing. Um, I don't usually watch science fiction, so
I am no one.
I usually watch,
I
something
have
different.
no
And
name,
Yeah.
no identity.
one thing that it
I
did
am
do,
nothing. I spit upon
which is
those
what
who
you're
fear
saying
me.
it did to you when you were a kid,
I
it
will
really did
fight
take
those
me
who
out of
oppress me. I will fight
whatever
alone
space
to
that I was
destroy the
in.
scourge.
Yeah.
More than a
I will
regular
fight until
movie,
I die.
much more than a regular
When their
movie, because
religion
there's
burns in
so
my
many
heart,
things to look at and so many things to
all
figure out
hail
and so many things
the
to
goddess
watch.
of
And
war.
it's so new and different than anything else. Um, it was very therapeutic in a way. Yeah, it
Interesting.
was. The only thing that I did notice that there's a little bit of like a Armageddon, humanity's end, apocalypse. I'm looking at like a little bit of
Alien.
a theme that's a little bit, like you said, it's a little bit dark, but I don't find the movie's dark. Do you think it's,
No.
what do you think that is?
Well, it's a really good reason. When you do a movie, and I've done 15, uh, the title will often determine, a lot of factors for, who your target audience is. Unfortunately, I've done a lot of lower budget films, and that means the word Armageddon, the word alien, the word apocalypse, the end of humanity. It's all bombastic, big, epic science fiction tropes that they were targeting. And, some of my movies weren't called that in the beginning. Okay, I'll run through the list. The
Okay.
first film was The Demons in My Head. It was originally called There's a Flying Saucer in my Backyard.
I like that.
Yeah, I know.
So sweet. It's a
Yeah.
sweet, yeah, it's a sweet sounding name.
Well, the second one was To Become One, which was the name, and that was a horror film. Third film was originally called Construct 3. Then it was called Infinity. Then it was called Continuum, science fiction. But the Battlestar Galactica had just come out, and so they said, let's call it Battlespace, to go after that market. So, that's kind of how it went. I did a couple of smaller films, then I had Humanity's End. By that point, I'd learned that, you know, that those naming things were important. Humanity's End was about the last man being hunted down,
I saw the
extinction.
trailer for that. I wanted to play all these things. And
Yeah,
I know I think you own them all.
I
So,
do. I have the rights to everything.
so if you could just put some in for me.
Of course.
Oh, thank you. Because I wanted to put the song in, the Manowar song. I wanted to put in
Well,
a
yeah, the
couple.
Manowar song, that music video, which one are we talking? Warriors of the World, or was it I Believe?
It's just a big one. It's
Oh, there's a
really,
lot.
really big. It goes on and on and on. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, those I can't do because of licensing and marketing.
Okay, okay,
It's,
okay.
even though
Whatever
I
you
directed
can,
them.
whatever you can do, it would just be
Yeah,
good.
yeah. I mean, my own films I own completely. So,
Yeah, that's what I
um,
figured.
like Humanity's End, what did I do after that? And of course, Humanity's End cost me a lot of money. We shot my first Hollywood film.
Oh, really?
Yeah, big spaceships, and I mean big spaceship stuff. Very Star Warsy. And then I was broke, and I did a film. I went to my distributor and said, "Help! I need money." I said, "The money's coming." I said, "Well, I can't afford to eat." Living in Los Angeles, and so I did a film called Alien Armageddon, and I only had, $28,000, and I made that film,
Unbelievable.
and it made me.
I can't
Well,
believe.
we followed a certain formula,
Okay.
and
Did you write the formula?
oh yeah,
You
I mean,
must.
just target audience and everything, knowing your audience, and the film has made me a massive profit, you know,
Wow.
and it basically, pulled me out of a big financial hole. So, yes, sometimes they're low budget, but sometimes they do well. So Alien Armageddon, then I did uh, Alien Dawn. I know. Which
I
was
know.
actually War of the Worlds, but they didn't want to call it War of the Worlds because they were afraid of being sued by, um,
The other War of the Worlds.
Tom Cruise, et cetera, and Spielberg. But I wouldn't have been sued. And then I did Starship Rising and Starship Apocalypse. There were two big science fiction
I
Star Trek.
saw
There were
those,
like
and
dark Star Trek
I
movies.
tried to find that, and I couldn't find that.
Oh,
So
they're big. Um,
I needed to find that. I wanted to find that.
yeah,
Maybe
you
this
would
is
have actually fit into Starship Rising really well. We had Claudia Wells in there. She was in Back to the Future. Really good actress. Very, very, strong, good actress. And she's only in there for one day, and she did such a good job. I
Mhm.
mean, actually, they all did.
Yeah.
But, you've got that same sort of qualities. You've got a very strong female um, presence, which you could command a starship. I see in her what I see in you is that strength.
Well, I'm
Um,
up for commanding a starship now, just so you know. It's in my
okay, well,
it's
we'll
my
work on that.
new in my wheelhouse thing. Yeah.
I'll talk to your manager about this.
Okay, cool, cool.
So,
Um,
that's the story. That's the flow. Many more movies, but
but what was the story behind Warriors of the World United?
oh, the Manowar thing. Okay, there somewhere out there is a really good making of documentary. So, um, there's a big backstory there. I needed to move to the United States permanently because I was doing movies in Australia, and the film commission kind of said, "You're not welcome here. You're
Oh,
not you're
oh,
not the type of person we want to represent in this country. We don't want you representing our country. We don't want anything to do with science fiction." They're very, very clear about that and really rude. Uh,
yeah.
that was, I mean, there's a big story there. Around that time, George Lucas was scouting for Star Wars Episode 2. And so backtrack a little bit, my first film was called Demons in My Head, was the world's first digital feature film. And I,
Widescreen, right?
yeah, and I was given so much abuse by the Australian film community because I did a digital film before there was a digital film industry.
Wow.
And they were really rude to me. I mean, except for one or two people, it was pretty horrible. George Lucas turns up in Australia and said, digital is the future. And it's like, well, I did a digital film 5 years ago. And he was really kind. He and Rick McCallum were really kind. My producer, Jane Rowland, hooked us up, and we had a really good discussion about the future of things.
I bet that was fascinating.
Well, it just made me want to leave Australia, and I did. Obviously, I'm British, so it was no problem. So Manowar kind of offered. Manowar's a heavy metal band from upstate New York, who are
They were
probably
really good.
bigger
I
in
have to
the
tell you, I don't like that kind of music, and they were still really, really good. I was listening to
I'm
them.
going to tell you, they're really talented
Yeah.
songwriters. You would actually, if you really listen to them,
And I
they've
did
got,
because I was doing this, and I was like, wow, I could
yeah.
actually do
But that
something.
singer, Eric, is an incredible singer. But
Mhm.
anyway, so they said, look, we need help with this music video thing we're doing. Our other directors left. Can you come help? And I thought, I was finished. I'd already done like 300 music videos at that point for, lots of
How
bands.
old were you then?
Would have been about 32 or 34. I
Wow,
started directing at 21, so
darn.
I'd done a lot, and
Yeah,
full time. That's all I've done is direct.
yeah.
But I said, well, okay, well, it gets me into the United States, so I'll do it. So next minute, I'm plonked in upstate New York in the middle of nowhere, and it's not good upstate New York. It's like countrified prison colony upstate New York.
They have a lot of prisons up there.
Well,
And
we were in a prison town.
here you go. There's quite a
Um,
few actually, and you'd be surprised. You could be driving along in a place that you think is a suburban place, like Danbury, and all of a sudden this great big prison's on the right
yeah.
side.
Well,
And you just wave.
this
Yeah,
is one of those high security prisons.
yeah.
Um,
The
but
wire and the whole thing, the
oh,
fence.
dude, it was, but the band was there. And so, I'd say in retrospect, it was really cool. Okay, so here's a quick side note. I'm going to, and the story. So this was the year 2000. I was living in a town called Auburn between Syracuse and Rochester on top of the Holiday Inn, which was the biggest hotel at the time. Now, Mr. Clinton had, finished his term, the President Clinton had finished his term. And so he was campaigning the region with Hillary, to try to get her elected. So there was this massive presidential tour, and they decided to stop, and visit a nearby town called Skinny Atlas and a few other places. But they decided to be in this region. Holiday Inn came to me and said, look, I had this unique apartment, literally is this apartment on top of the Holiday Inn. It was bizarre. And I was overlooking the prison. So go figure, very secure in
I guess
retrospect.
so. I guess so.
So they said, the Holiday Inn said, look, would you mind not being here for 2 weeks? And we'll put you into another room and we'll give you free food. And I thought, well, this is weird. I said, okay, you've been good to me. Why not? So I did. And I found out, next thing, suddenly I was contacted by the head of the White House communications staff. And they said, oh, hey, we're in town. We heard you're a film director. Would you like a tour of the communications center? Because we're a traveling circus, basically. So when,
Communication
the
center.
White House, it was many truckloads of staff. It was amazing.
Oh, wow.
And it was like bizarre because, he has a whole entourage of stuff going on. So I said, sure. I wasn't,
A bunch of trucks. Is it a bunch of trucks?
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I wasn't illegal, but I was on a certain visa, a very strict visa and everything. So they I think I did this tour of the White House communications. They knew everything about me. Like they had done background checks on me and everything.
Oh my God.
And it's like they knew about my movies, and it's like, who told them all this?
Wow.
The year 2000, before 9/11.
Wow.
Um,
That's
they gave me,
that's weird.
they gave me a T-shirt, they gave me a White House coin, all this memorabilia, and I was like, but it turns out because I did them a favor by my apartment was the most secure place, and so Clinton, Hillary, and
Bill.
Bill, slept in my bed
Uh-huh.
because it was a California king size bed and
I
everything.
gotcha. I
And I
gotcha.
found this out later. So President slept in my bed. He left a cigar sitting up at the top of the thing, which is really bizarre. And that was my introduction to the United States.
Oh, jeez.
Of course, I became a US citizen later,
Mhm.
but because of that, when I went to become a proper citizen, the financial way, and it cost me a lot of money.
Mhm.
Um, I went into the office, the citizenship office, and I saw that somebody come out with a pile of books or a file like a foot and a half deep. The guy was carrying this stuff around, and I thought, whoever has that file, I feel sorry for that person. So I waited. I was the first there. I was early and waited. They're calling all these other people, little files this big. And all of a sudden, the head of the immigration office picked up that big file and he called my name. I thought, oh, that's my file.
What? Why?
Well, prior to that, I'd also, I, so another weird situation.
Okay.
It's all connected. I went
I think
to,
we should be doing a movie is what I
yeah,
think.
there's a movie.
By the way, your circle of your light keeps hitting your glasses. I don't know if you're gonna,
Oh, sorry. Is that better?
yeah, but I don't know if you're gonna hate that or not.
That's okay. That's the future. So anyway, um, prior to that, in Vandenberg Air Force Base, after this, they had a rocket launch, and I got to attend it through another, because I do science fiction films, so I got to attend it.
Rocket launch?
Yeah, it was cool.
They invited you to a rocket launch?
Yeah.
How cool
So,
is that?
so I went along, and then they said, you can't go into this room because it's top secret. And only US citizens can go in this room. So this would have been, I think, 2012, yeah, around that time. Yeah, it's top secret. You can't go in there unless you're a US citizen. I said, okay. Meanwhile, other people were, people were going in there, and they suddenly said, look, we've pulled up your file. You've got clearance. You have security clearance.
What?
So they let me in the room.
Now this isn't back when you had the file that was this big.
Well, I didn't know this file existed. Turns out that back to when I was hanging around with Manowar, they had done, I was under surveillance, and they'd done files on me. So when it came to came to get my citizenship, they knew. The guy just said, "I've never seen anything like this. Normally, you have to wait 6 weeks, and you apply, wait 6 weeks, and we'll decide if you want. You can be a citizen. But all the work's been done," he said. "I can offer you right now U.S. citizenship. You can be sworn in today if you want."
Wow.
So all of this nonsense, you go back in time to when I was starting working with Manowar and all this craziness, and turns out somehow it had led me to becoming a citizen like that.
How about that?
And it was just, it cost me $50,000.
It's a lot.
However, in total,
Everybody, $50,000?
well, I think people could probably do it for less.
That's a lot of money.
Well, 25 grand would normally be a fee, in total, but I had to go through the 50 grand because of the fame. I'm not famous, but I'm infamous. And there's a lot of press about me out there. So I had to go certain routes, and it just meant getting the best lawyer and protecting myself. I had a stalker who tried to kill me once.
We're going to talk about that.
Yeah, that's so, there was a lot of weirdness in my life that I had to really make sure I did everything really, really well. But, the US government respected me enough to, saw that I did everything right, didn't do anything wrong in life, and gave me my citizenship on the spot, all because of Manowar. So anyway, then there's the Manowar story. So I'll get back to that. So they said, look, all I wanted to do was a music video for the band, and they're at a point where they'd spent all their money from the record company on, something. I mean, making an incredible album. They just went overboard with this album. There was no money left, which often happens. The record company at the time, Nuclear Blast, chose not to pay for a music video because they'd spent so much money. And I'd had a relationship with Nuclear Blast, the record label in Germany, prior to this, because I'd done a bunch of music videos, for other bands of theirs, and we cobbled some money together, and we did this music video in upstate New York. And originally it was just going to be the band performing, in a little room and what have you. And then it got bigger and bigger. I realized that, there's a whole making of, and we shot this music video out in a quarry, a rock quarry, because it's heavy metal and rock.
Very cool. Very cool.
And then we couldn't afford flamethrowers or anything, so we got gasoline in little plastic cups and set a fire in front of the band or in front of them, and then threw the gasoline cups into the fire. So there's like these fireballs going off, and we did this into the evening. And as we were filming, a snowstorm came in, which was really bizarre because it was like May in upstate New York, and it was the most bizarre thing. So at the end of the music video, there was this giant snowstorm at the end. So, it wasn't my biggest budget. It was probably, it was a very small budget thing. But then the song came out. The song went to #2 in Germany, which was great. Regular charts, human charts, not heavy metal charts.
Yeah.
And the music video went to #1 on the music, like the MTV of Germany, and it stayed at #1 for about 6 or 8 weeks. So I had this massive music video on my hands, and that was kind of cool.
That's fantastic.
But it comes back to sometimes you just work and you have no money, you have nothing, and you work on it. And I mean, to be honest, it's nothing to do with my great music video work, more to do with the fact that it was a big song. And I was lucky to capture the band performing, and it was such a catchy song, and it became their biggest hit song ever, and I just happened to be there at the time, so that was nice. And I went on from there to do music videos for Rhapsody of Fire with Christopher Lee and all that, and he was in Lord of the Rings. And
I read you had something to do with YouTube.
Oh, YouTube. Oh, okay, we're jumping around here.
Yeah.
That was so. Back in 1983 or 84 or 85, I'm trying to think. I was involved in the church. I was on television preaching Jesus. And turns
I
out,
didn't know you went through a period like that.
oh, there's footage.
Well, I think that's cool.
Yeah, other 18-year-olds were running around, trying to pick up girls and drink alcohol. I was on television arguing with Catholic priests about Jesus.
Oh, good for you. I like that.
Yeah, I started late. So because of that, I was hanging around with other Christian groups, certain groups, just so happened to be the same group that you two were hanging out with as well.
Oh, cool.
And so I just kind of used that little connection to do a music video for them way back in the early days. And I guess because I was this young something, they just said, yeah, sure, go right ahead. It was released on one of their compilation videos, but it wasn't really a mainstream music video. And it really was just working the Christian connection. But when you were like, at the time, I guess I was 16 or 17, whatever it was, you don't think twice about it. You think, well, this is how the world's going to be, because famous people always, and, being on television, that's what I grew up with. So it didn't really, I look back and go, God, I could have really done something with all of that.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was just, I just thought that's how my life was going to be. I thought I was going to be a Christian filmmaker and preach Jesus through movies, but God had other plans for me.
It's never too late. That's for sure.
No, I'm happy. Trust me.
Did you hear about the new studio that Wahlberg and Mel Gibson and Elon Musk are starting
Oh
here.
no, that's not true. You know that's a joke.
No, it's not.
It is. I swear to God, that's been a joke been going around for months.
Maybe, but they were on TV. They were on talking about it on the internet, talking about it. 'Cause
Oh,
they
okay. I actually thought that was a complete joke. So I
think so.
yeah. If it's been a meme for a long time. It's an anti-woke studio or something.
So that's the concept. So
Yeah.
maybe
I think it's a joke. I
that's too
don't think
bad.
it's
We
real.
really need that.
Well, I know, but you've got Angel TV or whatever, Angel Studios now, the Christian. I'm not Christian friendly. Christians don't generally like. I did a lot of Christian heavy metal bands back in the day. They don't like what I do. I'm a little too uh, extreme. I don't follow the party line of, um, even though I'm probably a nicer person than most Christians on the planet, some of those Christians.
Mm.
Um, I'm just not, I'm just don't vibe with that so well. I once, so even when I was doing the Christianity preaching stuff, we were going on uh, into the mission field, went to the Philippines, hanging out with the Charismatic Assembly of God Christians. I had one of them hold a gun to me in the Philippines, wearing a Jesus t-shirt, you know, and because I was of the Church of Christ, which is basically Baptist, and they didn't like the fact that we were there spreading the gospel and doing that type of thing. So I I don't vibe with many Christians, to be honest.
Funny how evil can sneak in wherever it wants to, even in
Well, in their head, they were doing righteous things.
no.
From his perspective, this young man with a looked like a semi-automatic machine gun. He felt he was doing right by God, and
Yeah.
I thought I was doing right by God. And it's the same with the Crusades or whatever goes on.
I stick with
Um,
what's in the Bible, and there's nothing in the Bible that says that's right by God. So
yeah, so I agree, but they'll argue. You know, I could argue that all day.
I want to hear about this. I know you had a terrible thing happen with that fire. They call it Woolsey fire. Is that what they called?
Oh yeah, well the fire that can't be named.
Why can't it?
Well, because I signed a piece of paper saying I can't
Oh, well, I just named it.
name that fire. Albeit there was a fire in Malibu in December. I mean, it is in public record, of course, and I was in the press a lot because of it. The house, basically everything I owned burned down. Not just me, but more so
Yeah.
girlfriend. Everything went, and you're kind of wiped out financially and physically and everything. And we're in the middle of doing a TV series called The Time War, which was a big high-end television production, kind of a movie type thing. So then you lose your props, some of your costumes, some of your robots, some of your cameras, your
Your
lenses.
footage, probably.
Well, I've learned from a young age to back things up.
Mhm.
So I did have backups, but I did lose some footage. Yeah, there was one great scene I would never recover of the actress Tracy Birdsall being strapped on a cross and gasoline was thrown on her and she was set on fire. I mean, in the movie, incredible scene. It was brutal, but we kind of reshot that in a different way. It's just, it was incredible performance. I have the raw, the live footage, and every time I looked at it, I felt like crying. It was so real and brutal. But I was scared if we reshot that sequence that it wouldn't have the same magic in it. It was one of those magical scenes that you shoot, and also she'd been through a lot. She was living next door to a famous musician. I don't know if I should name him. And around the time we were doing the Time War, and he basically, he was a neighbor. He got very physically aggressive with her, in a sexual way. and that kind of really traumatized her. So I didn't want to keep putting Tracy through certain scenes, because it brings it back to that time period. And, so it was really tough when you're doing that type of movie. Actors, as you know, can get traumatized by many events. And I put Tracy Birdsall through so much torture and pressure that, I don't think many actors would want that in their life. It was really brutal stuff. So, the neighbor almost rapes her basically. And then 2 weeks later, we're doing a rape scene where her father in the thing is raping her, for example, or something, so you don't want to put an actress through all those things too much, because it is, how it is. It does weigh on your
Put
soul.
yourself in that position, and
Yeah. And,
it happened to you, so it's very difficult to, you can't shake that.
no, so you kind of have to be a little bit fair. And I mean, there's all these horror stories. I know there's a lot of actors out there who don't want to work with me because I do such brutal stuff, but it's just, it's how I am. My own daughter decided, she's at one point, she was a model, very good looking, and a journalist at one point. She watched one of my movies, I think Rogue Warrior, Robot Fighter. And after it, she says, wow, that's incredible acting. But Dad, I thought I wanted to be an actor. But having watched your movie and knowing what you did and how you got there with her, I don't want to act. I said, I don't want to be put in that position where, and that's the movie you saw. She said, I couldn't do that. It's so much hard work emotionally. I don't want to go there. And that's what, that's the problem with my movies is they're brutal, but I punish my actors emotionally. And it scares a lot of people. It scares a lot of actors. I've had actors refuse many times to be in my films because it's just too much. It's too intense.
Well, from what I've seen, they just seem like real people.
Yeah.
A lot of times these sci-fi movies, they don't seem like real people.
As you know, you got to live it. You got to, as an actor, you've got to be in the role. And I don't mean the method acting. I'm not a fan of the method thing or the Stanislavski thing. Yeah, that sometimes works for some people, depending on who it is. But method acting, where for the layperson, is where you live that character almost 24/7. You live as that person. And I can see it. I would probably be a method actor if I was an actor. I think I'd have to be, because I'm, try to connect with that. You get in a vibe. But I don't think it's always the healthiest way to be for an actor, because it can really destroy your soul. And Tracy Birdsall's
You can find a spot, a place that you can get to.
Yeah.
Over and over and over, and then get rid of it, and then get to it, and then get rid of it, and get to it, and get rid of it.
Yeah. And that's healthy.
And getting rid of it is really hard, but it's really important.
Yeah. And I mean, that's like with Tracy Birdsall. That's what she would do. That's why I keep working with her, because I like actors who can, she would know the character, feel what the character was feeling, and the moment the movie's done, that's it. And when I did the Time War, the TV series, which is 10 hours of, I'll give you the pitch of the Time War.
Okay.
So it's a 10-hour TV series. It's Adolf Hitler traveling through time, rewriting history, and his daughter tries to stop him.
Wow.
Tracy plays the daughter.
Ah.
And, it's a 10-hour dark, depressing, epic tale, a bit like Lord of the Rings. But with Nazis and flying saucers, and traveling through 18 different universes. So for her, she said, look, I'm at a point where after 10 hours of finished content, she says, I don't think I could return to this character ever again. It's just too much for me. It's too dark and depressing. And she even had a wrinkle from playing the character. She said, I call it the eye patch wrinkle, because she wore an eye patch. And, when she would hold her face in a certain way as the character, but she played the character so much, her face started to stick in a certain way. So, that's why sometimes you just don't want to put the actors, if you lose your footage in a fire, you don't want to put the actors through a reshoot.
Yeah.
Because maybe it's a bit too damaging.
Are you finished with that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, thank goodness. Yeah. we're doing the sound mix as we speak.
Oh, good. Okay.
So
I knew you
it's
were still working on some part of it.
yeah, I actually I had to move to I was living in Los Angeles for years. I had to move to Atlanta, Georgia, uh, to finish the sound in the middle of nowhere, not nowhere, but a very quiet area because we're doing 10 hours of Foley and sound mixes and
Yeah.
5.1, but
Yeah.
10 hours of it.
Right.
A movie is easy, but 10-hour movie, that's quite tough.
That's a lot more than one movie. That's five.
Yeah, so I've had to build a studio here, a sound studio to do the final mix, um, which is where I'm calling you from. Uh,
Ah,
you know, that's just how it is.
so there was one pretty bad thing that happened. You had a stalker.
Yeah.
How did that
I had
happen?
two actually.
You had two stalkers?
Well, one I don't, okay. Yeah. I mean, I
Men,
would,
women,
I
girls,
think we should,
boys? What was it? And why?
well, there's probably a whole episode just talking about this. I mean, I could probably, it's Discovery Channel did a documentary there's a TV series called Stalked, Stalked, Stalked. Yeah, I have to do the American. Anyway, they did a 1 hour episode about the situation with me and the stalker, but it didn't. It was early days, and the story hadn't ended. Uh, so I'll give you the brief summary, but this is probably we should probably do a second episode where we trade stories back and forth, dark dark tales of Hollywood or
Oh,
something.
all right. All right. I'll do
Um, but basically, I'll give you the quick version. I think in 2003, I tried online dating very briefly before it was really a thing because, traveling a lot, lonely and everything.
I didn't know we
And
had online dating in 2003.
yeah, there was, but, early days. Um, and I got off it really quick because there was too many nut jobs even then. But this one girl found me through that. She was an actress in Los Angeles. Her name's Wendy Finer. She was in a few movies. I'm naming her for good reason.
Mhm.
She was in a movie called Warlock and something else. Anyway, so she developed an obsession with me because I was casting movies and doing science fiction films back when not everyone was doing movies. Back in the early 2000s. So she would send weird packages to my mum's address, track down my
Huh?
address. Also dead animals squashed and in the mail, all sorts of stuff.
Oh my God, that's horrible.
Well, it went on and on for years, and then her best friend, or former best friend, Ivor Franks, came to me and said, "Look, I've seen what Wendy's doing. If you want to pull a restraining order out on her, I've seen what she's up to, and she's really mentally sick. I'll go to court with you." And I said, "Look, I'm in another country, or I'm in upstate New York. I don't care. No big deal.
But
Just,
yeah, but when you start sending things to your mom, that's no good.
yeah." I mean, it went on and on and on, and not just my mum and my daughter and everything.
Oh my,
Um, so anyway, then I was chatting with Ivor, this act. It turns out she was an actress as well, and I needed somebody to do a quick role in Los Angeles. I said, "Hey, I need a voice. Do you want to do a voiceover role for me?" She said, "Sure." I flew in, we did the voice. That made the stalker go ballistic. So Wendy just went off the charts, buying guns, and as I'm giving you the Reader's Digest version, trying online campaigns to bring me and Ivor down. So she was now going after Ivor as well. She bought guns. Police raided her house. They found weapons. They found dossiers of filing cabinets full with, downloads from the internet and printed up.
oh my God.
Any way she could. It got worse and worse, and eventually Ivor was in fear of her life. I mean, the death threats were getting pretty serious on both ends. We've got recordings of them. And as I say, I'm giving you the
I got it.
quick version. Um, Ivor needed protection, and her brother Michael Martin, was basically playing security. He was a black belt in Taekwondo, and he ended up being in my movie as well. So this made things worse. Lovely man, became a really dear friend. Uh, Ivor mentally couldn't take this, and so she was getting on. She got on some medication, I think, that eventually gave her brain cancer, and the stress basically killed her from it. and she passed away. Mike, devastated by the loss of his sister, gave up on life because they were like this. They were buddies. He passed away. He just stopped taking his medication for diabetes. He just let himself disappear. Wendy, the stalker, was in and out of jail, was threatening police, trying to track me down everywhere. The police, Beverly Hills Police Department, said you need to buy a gun. I said I can't legally buy a gun. I'm not a U.S. citizen. They said, look, if we're telling you to buy a gun. She's on the hunt for you, and the rule is get the gun registered. If she comes within 500 feet, because restraining orders and everything, you can shoot her legally. And what you got to do is shoot her because of all the threats. She had been threatening cops as well. Call the police. You'll be put in jail for overnight, and the next day we'll check everything, and then you'll be released.
Okay.
And they said that's what the Beverly Hills Police Department officer told us. Me and Iva. But eventually, it got really bad. Eventually, Wendy suicided. She was doing a combination of some vodka and some prescription medication. You should not mix the two, and this is a classic example of don't mix Zoloft. I'm not saying Zoloft was it. Something like Zoloft and vodka. Whatever the mix is, it was something like that. So I saw it firsthand. It just can turn into a complete nut job. So out of the stalking situation, there's only one of us left alive, and that's me. So there's the story. I mean, there's a bigger story than that. And then the second situation was I had an ex-girlfriend who got really violent with me, and I won't talk about that. I'm really violent. It's all documented. I have so much footage. Oh my goodness. I got 20 minutes I have hours of footage. I had to because I had to call the police on her. She tried to get me arrested, try to get me put in jail, constantly trying to do all sorts of stuff. But, her story's a bit more tragic as well. But, again, it was
One good thing about if you're a director and you've got film cameras and you can have some kind of proof.
yeah. Yeah, and I'm hanging around with all these good-looking actresses, and she thinks I'm hooking up with them. It's like, no. But again, it was medication. Because she was going through cancer and stuff. So you got to be a little bit fair to people. But she has no memory of it, of course, now. But I have the footage.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the dark side of Hollywood. Thank you.
I know. We are going to have to do a story about that.
Yeah, and I'd like to hear your stories too, because I know you've got some stories.
A few.
I know, but it's important. Those stories are important because it teaches us, teaches, dare I say, it, the younger people of the dangers.
Yeah.
I was young at the time. You were young when it happened. We got to educate other people.
Yeah.
Cheers to that.
So you've done so much. It's funny because I took a 20-year hiatus pretty much. I did some things during that period of time in this business, but most of the time I was doing other things. And a lot of it was for philanthropy, and I loved it. So people ask me now, or I ask me now, what do I want to do? So I'm going to ask you, what do you want to do now?
I'm doing it.
What are you doing?
I'm finishing the Time War, then going to do another movie, science fiction epic. I'm kind of now doing the types of films I really wanted to do when I was younger.
Okay.
And I when I have ventured into those areas, of all my movies, the ones where I really just said, I want to do what I want to do, they are still resonating with people now. When I did something where I was told you have to do this type of movie because we need to hit this target financially, they do well, but they don't resonate. And so all I want to do is make high-end epic science fiction stories of massive tales of, that you've never seen before.
That would be
Getting away from Star Trek and Star Wars and all that type of thing. it's in my head, it's all there. I lived these stories as a child, going back, when I was under duress. I would turn my brain off and just go into a fantasy world.
What do you think about Elon Musk going to Mars and really believing that there's something out there and that we could live in another planet?
Well, it takes history will tell the true story of what needs to be done. I think he's you know I'm not interested in his ups and down emotions or anything like that, but I do think he's on the right path. I think we need people like that, like him and others, to carry a torch forward. I know those people are inspired by science fiction films. So what I'm interested in doing is exploring where humanity is going, where will we be not in 50 years or 100 years, but 1,000 years or 10,000 or 50,000 or a billion years from now, what will be left of us, if anything? How much further can we go as a race? Do we evolve into something else? Do we merge with the AI? Do we join with machines and become the super entities? Do we genetically modify ourselves and become, creatures that can live on Mars? Because if we want to live on the planet Mars, we're going to have to genetically modify ourselves. We won't be human beings. We will be something else. We would have started as us. And that's the hope of humanity is we can blow each other up in a war, or we can try to find a way forward through all that nonsense. I mean, I hate to say it, war is sometimes important and inevitable. It sometimes pushes us forward as a race, as long as there aren't big wars. But beyond the war and the chaos, what will be born? What will come out of it? If there's a God in the universe, did he design us just to be little people and pray and, do these little things and go to churches and make little cakes and have good Sundays and do a 9-to-5 job? I don't think God ever imagined that's what I want out of my people. If I've created these people or whoever we are, it's like we're a clock being wound up. Sometimes you wind the clock and it's a little painful, but then the clock starts running and doing its thing. And I think there's a hope to humanity that we haven't fully realized. And that's why I make my movies, to explore this, to understand this. That's why I don't have much interest in a movie that's set 10 years from now. But I have a lot of interest in a movie set 1,000 or 5,000 years from now or 10,000 years from now. So that's what I'm doing in my upcoming movies. I'm exploring the deep, furthest levels of humanity and how far we could go. And no, these aren't documentaries, but I would hope there's a framework there for something for us as humans to understand. So that's why, like, the Time War is the first step in that, towards that journey. It's saying, okay, there is time. There could be time travel. Rewriting history is a big problem. So I had to define it within 18 universes and say, okay, this is defined in this little capsule. But at the end of it, there's a piece of hope that says, what will humanity become? What will we become? And that's really where I'm heading out, because that's who I was as a child. At the age of 2, I dreamed of that. At the age of 6, I was dreaming daily of that. Between the ages of 6 and 10, that was pretty much my world. I was put into a position where I had to escape from the reality of life into a fantasy world between the ages of 6 and 10. Again, a very dark situation. Next episode. But out of that, something good came. A drive. That's why I can't stop.
Well, that's
So
tragic.
that's my problem.
Better. In a way, we come through them and we can make things better. We can go down the toilet. So
Yeah.
things better. That's good.
Yeah, and that's it's a humbling thought. I started life as a born again Christian, well, not life, but my adult life, and I grew out of it, not in a bad way. I'm very fond of Christian people, but it didn't fit me. It didn't fit who I was. I wasn't born to be that person. and I was heavily involved in all of that, but I don't have a Christian ideal, but I'm very warm to the message, and I see the point of the message, and I see where it's.
Well, there might be something in Revelation that you could put into your movie.
Well, I did that movie.
Oh, you did? Okay. There's a lot in there. There's a
I've done those movies.
lot in there. Yeah.
Yeah, but remember, I've got 3 years of Bible college, so I could really tell you about Revelation. I could really tell you a lot about it,
There's a lot in there.
but I don't feel it's been interpreted correctly. Translations are, and as I said, I did 3 years of study on
That's
it.
why I'll
Yeah.
watch the movie you made about that.
Oh yeah, it's out there.
I will.
But it's I don't feel the concept that there's an apocalypse coming soon and we're all going to die, and Jesus is going to come back. So certain Christians will go out and say, let's bring on the third World War III so that Jesus will come back, and that's the mentality.
That's not the way it's going to be.
No, but there is a lot of Christians who believe that concept.
Wow.
So let's bring it. Jesus is coming back soon, and that doomsday belief is not healthy. And if you remember the late great Planet Earth,
Yes.
the book written in the, I guess it was 70s. Hal Lindsey, sold 5 million or 10, 20 million copies of it, documentary and this and that. Predicted the world was going to end in 1984 or 86, around that time period. Well, guess what? He was wrong.
Mhm.
There were Christians who went and mortgaged, who sold off all their possessions because they're waiting for the end of the world, because Hal Lindsey said it was going to happen.
It says it's going to happen in the Bible. So
Yeah, but he was representing the majority of Christians in the 70s, making these statements, and a pox on him for daring say that. He was wrong, and they're all wrong. And I just don't think God ever intended us to be doomsday prophets.
well, it says that you're never going to know
No,
when it's going to happen, and it can
no.
happen.
So why bother? In the meantime, let's push on and do good things.
Do good things for
You
people.
know,
That's right. That's
I
right.
mean, look, right now we've got wars happening here and there, but we've been blessed with the fact that nobody has dropped a nuclear bomb on anyone this week, and these are good things. These are
Very,
blessings.
very big blessing. We're very lucky.
Yeah,
Take care of
yeah. The
I'm
world.
very proud of our military for being able to take care of that.
Oh yeah.
So
But imagine you lived in World War II, the height of the Nazi Empire, and it's like, this would have looked like Armageddon to me. I mean, come on. I mean, it looked like the end of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. World War One. That was the war to end all wars. That would have been, disease. They had the Spanish flu come in.
Oh, wow.
So I don't feel that the focus on Revelation, when people really understand its history, what it was written about and what it was written for, too much is given, on that book as, let's focus on the words of Jesus. Let's focus on some of the great deeds of the Christian good deeds that were done, or let he without sin cast the first stone. Great words to live by.
That's right.
This is what we should be. Thou shalt. It's very clear in the Bible. You shouldn't kill people. Sometimes you have to. I get it, but
the idea.
yeah, the concept of Jesus was bringing peace and love.
Mhm.
In all his words, just looking at his words, his recorded words, and the rest of it was an interpretation, and it still is. So I wasn't put on this earth to preach Jesus or interpret the Bible or tell people what to believe, but I know I was born to do what I do, is create great science fiction stories that will maybe,
Broaden people's mind.
maybe. If not, I'm happy. I have to create them to make me happy.
That's right. That's right.
I'm not preaching. I'm not preaching Jesus. I did once, didn't go good.
Everything leads you to where you are.
Yeah. Oh, I'll say, that video is pretty funny if you ever see it.
I would love to see it. I'd love to see anything that you do. And I really want to thank you for being on the show for me today. Thank you very much. This was so exciting. And we have more to do. We definitely have more to do together.
I would love to talk to you one day and interview you.
Me? Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
because, I've watched your show, the podcast, video podcast thingy on YouTube, and you're always so giving to the people, but I would love to hear more from you because when you speak and talk about your stories, they are delightfully amazing. And you've got history, you've got I can look over your shoulder right now and I can see on one side you've got your ex-husband and the other side you've got your father. I'm assuming that's your father in the photo. They're on your shoulders. They're like two little angels
Mhm.
behind you.
And then
And
that's Liza Minnelli and David Guest. My husband was one of David's ushers in that. She signed a huge cabaret thing for me over there. Said what a good actress I am. Jane Russell gave me this one. We had her at the house. We were doing a fundraiser. I've had a huge life. I really have. I helped
that's
produce this show called Enchanted April, is nominated for Best Play. Um, I just don't go around talking about stuff
yeah.
like that.
Well, somebody else should talk to you about
All
this,
right, all right, all right.
because your father looks so delightful.
He was awesome. He was my
Yeah,
he was my
I
best.
know.
He was my bestie.
Yeah, and that's why I'm watching. I was like, who's that guy behind her? And I figured it out. It's your dad.
I have a feeling they're both still behind me.
I think so.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope
I
so.
think so. And as I said, you've got a story and a half.
Thanks. Well, we'll do it soon.
We shall.
Okay. God bless you, honey.
Thank
Keep doing
you.
what you're doing and you keep doing great things, and you're doing great things for everybody. So, also, Atlanta's really lucky to have you. I miss you, but Atlanta's lucky to have you.
Well,
So,
I'll come back to the desert soon. Don't worry.
all right. Well, have a great, wonderful time there and a very prosperous time.
Thank you, dear.
Okay. God bless you, honey. Bye-bye.